All right, show off. Okay, for those of people that don't know, last week I got myself a photographer that was on here, and he got jealous, so he got them to send him one.
That's right. No problem. My good folks over at Almo Hospitality hooked me up with that bad boy. I also shot a video all about how to use that product with them that I just posted today. But let me tell you, how great is that? And it gave my wife such a feeling of comfort to know that we have something that's safe, that can sanitize, all just with a little spray. So how cool is that?
So she liked it, huh?
Oh, she liked it. I love it. I think it's great. And if you guys want to check it out, go to hospitality.almoproav.com. That's hospitality.almoproav.com. And no, they're not paying us for this. I just really think the product is important, and you guys should take a look at it for your business as well. Man.
So Glenn, today's a special day.
It is.
Because it made me realize that, and I actually said this to my wife today, that this gentleman made me realize that I'm a frustrated designer. That I was born to be a designer. I've always said if I wasn't in the hotel business, I would want to be a floral designer. I would want to work in a flower shop designing flowers. And every time I walk through one of his hotels, you know this, I've told you this off camera, you know me personally, that there's nothing better than me walking through one of his hotels. And it says something to me, and every single aesthetic, every single design, every single thing he does and his team does speaks to me, because I'm not only a fan, I'm not only a customer, but I am a hotel guy.
Yep, so, and I am definitely the first. I'm definitely a fan of our guests, Mr. Roger Thomas and Todd-Avery Lenahan of Wynn Design Development. I think we should get right into bringing them on. What do you say about that, Anthony?
Let's design this pod.
Hey, we are here. We got Roger Thomas, who's emeritus with Wynn Hotels, Wynn Design and Development, and Todd-Avery Lenahan, who's picked up the mantle, is going to be continuing the love that Roger has given to all of these hotels and casinos over the decades. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. What an esteemed honor it is for both of us here.
Good morning.
Thank you both for having us.
Yeah.
It's an absolute pleasure. And like I was telling you off camera, Roger, when I saw your interview a few years back, I literally played it 5 times, and I realized why I love the hotel business. That design and the aesthetic and getting the feeling right is everything in travel and everything in hospitality. And it just makes me feel better when I walk through one of your hotels.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. We work really hard at exactly that. The guest experience, the surprise, the drama, the humor. And those are also the reasons, that kind of excitement, that kind of experience are the reasons that Steve Wynn and I unanimously elected Todd-Avery Lenahan to follow me in that important chair of head of Wynn Design and Development.
You know, and that's a question I had for you just now. I was just about to ask you that. So Todd, you know, Roger and everything he's done is legendary. And can you hear me?
He's a legend, not just work. He is the legend.
He's a legend, and I haven't had an opportunity to meet him in person, but he is a legend.
Arthur?
And so he doesn't hear my sound. So Todd, talk a little bit about what you're a legend in your own right. You had your own company. You have tremendous experience. So how was that feeling when you were told that you were going to be the person kind of taking over?
Well, it was an incredible honor, but I wasn't told. I was asked. And it was a difficult decision in some ways. It was natural in other ways. The difficulty came in that I had such a great collection of relationships that I had built over the past 30 years in the industry, and the thought of, sort of winding those up and becoming singular to one company came with quite a bit of heaviness, because a part of what I've always enjoyed is the incredible diversity of my work and the clients that have brought me to incredible places all over the planet, working in different contexts, different cultures, different settings. And so the idea of sort of turning the page on that chapter came with a heaviness. But, the industry has changed so much in the past 25 years that the opportunity to work within a vertically integrated organization in this case, Wynn, who I had been collaborating. Roger and I have been working together for almost 20 years. So in some ways, it was really natural. But the idea to work in a vertically integrated organization that places such high value on the experience, on design, and to basically own the entire process and not be beholden to a separate operator and a separate owner was really very enticing. So in that regard, it was wonderful. Although there was some sadness with, turning the page, there was real excitement about, in a way, kind of returning to where I started, because I began in the industry in an organization like this that was fully vertically integrated.
Yeah, and I apologize for using the word told instead of asked. I didn't want to diminish the career you had built, and I apologize for using those words.
Oh, no apology, no apology.
But that being said, if somebody told me I would have that opportunity, I'd be like, yes, whatever you say, I'm all over that. So, Roger, let's go a little back in the way back machine, because you've been very, very influential on reinventing Las Vegas from the terms of look and feel and substance of the entire place. What was that first project that you worked on that you felt like, wow, I've arrived, we're changing things, we're not going to really be focusing on 99-cent shrimp cocktails anymore?
Well, I think it was a double experience. One was Bellagio, because Steve Wynn changed the entire philosophy of the hotel model in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. And that was that the casino was not the driver anymore. Entertainment, rooms, food, and retail would take equal partnership in the experience. So it became a completely different experience. But my real entry into changing the way I felt Las Vegas was Wynn Las Vegas, when Steve finally, after 20 years of partnering in design of hotels, said, I want something no one has ever seen before, which allowed me to use a newly invented language of design and experience, and start by inventing the alphabet, the words, the sentence structure, and the grammar in a way that I thought was pertinent. And it came at exactly the right time, because I was mature enough in my experiences with Steve and Elaine Wynn to come forward with the kind of strength and conviction. Much of what I presented, many of my ideas, had been formulated over the 20 years before, but were not appropriate to the experiences I was creating. So it was a delicious opportunity to start with tabula rasa.
Oh, totally sounds like that. But you just came off a couple of years prior, reinventing Vegas again with Bellagio, bringing something that had never been seen before. How do you continue to push your creative strengths to top something which many would see as a crowning achievement in one of the most iconic buildings on the entire planet?
Well, Todd had this experience too. The genius of Steve Wynn is he always made you achieve more than you thought you were able to achieve. He was great at inspiring and pushing. When we did Bellagio, he said, I need you to create the most important, elegant, fantastic hotel, casino, resort on planet Earth. I want it to be so good, it can never be equaled. When we went across the street and started Wynn, he said, I know I asked you to do the very best before, but you're going to have to go way past that now.
And
I want even better experience.
Roger,
when you get something like that, you get a project like that, which is everyone's dream, right? Yeah. Everyone in what we do, I don't care if you're a doctor or you're a designer, when someone says, go past where you thought you can go, and we're going to give you the money and we're going to give you the time, we want something that's never been done before. So Todd, where do you start? Like, where do you... Like, what do you start with? What's the first thing you do when you get a project like that? Do you go meditate first?
Well, Anthony, first of all, I want to commend you. I'm glad you used the word dream, because that was really what Roger and I and the team were charged to do, was to dream on behalf of others. I wasn't a part of Bellagio. Roger was. But with Bellagio, there was a precedent. There were references to Italy and the historic elements of architecture that informed some of what they were doing. When Wynn Las Vegas began, it wasn't called Wynn Las Vegas. The project's working title was Le Rêve, and it was named after the Picasso that our chairman owned. And our charge was to create something that really was fantastical and was dreamy. So we didn't really have an archetype or a precedent that preceded us that we could reference, like some of the other properties, or say even Bellagio had. And so that was a greater challenge for Roger and I. And when we start, people often think that the seminal idea comes in a moment, but it really started the moment that we were born. I think Roger and I share this philosophy, because when we design something, it is not of a moment, momentous thought that we've had. It is the collective life experiences that we bring to the table. So in any one project, we're reaching way back into our emotional, intellectual database, and we are referencing things that come from very deep, intimate places. Design is easy to judge on a superficial level because of you see it on the surface, but so much of what's in it is very personal and very intimate, and it comes from places that we often don't talk about, but that's what gives the design real soul, real heart, and it's something that the guest really connects with. Roger, right. We've often shared that philosophy, but do you remember when we started Le Rêve, our commission, our request from the chairman was dream, do things that were fantastic.
Right. Le Rêve really means the dream, and that's the show that has been at Wynn Las Vegas since opening. Roger, I saw you nodding while Todd was speaking. Maybe you could expand on what he was saying.
Well, Todd's exactly right. It's because you're going to invent something that no one has ever seen before. That's part of the charge of the dream. Your dreams are very personal, and every night when you go to sleep, you draw on your entire life in what goes on in your mind. And so we thought of creating experiences that were not only new and innovative for the sake of being new and innovative, never seen before, but experiences with a dreamlike quality. And it allowed me to fine tune a philosophy of design that I call evocatecture, which is charging my entire team and myself with the constant reminder that our job is not selecting the most beautiful fabrics and stones and woods and things and thinking of great shapes. Our job is to evoke drama and humor and mystery and intrigue and surprise and delight, to make rooms that are joyous, places where the party is always going on, inspirational places where you feel like you have never been a better self than in those environments. Yeah. And make it completely unique, because if you do, your guests will want to come back. And the reason that Todd was selected for cameo appearances for Wynn Las Vegas, along with Jacques Garcia and Naomi Leff and Vincente Wolf, was because in touring around the world, having Steve's approval to select anyone on the planet, do not let money or time or space direct who you're selecting, Roger, he said. I want the best. I want the ones that are able to deliver the dream. And I had known Todd's work for a while, as I had studied the work of these other individuals, and absolutely knew that Todd was able to bring that kind of fresh originality and evocatecture to the environment. He held valuable those same directives that we held valuable. We didn't have to teach Todd who we were. He was already a member of the family. And he's been in every project except one since the inception of Wynn Resorts.
Roger, you said something. First of all, that relationship is born. You somehow, when you guys were born, you guys connected immediately before you met each other, and so you were born of the same flavor. When I walk through, and everything you just said really speaks to me, because when you design something, a lot of designers and a lot of hotels, someone had a dream, someone felt something, and all of a sudden it becomes that. But it doesn't speak to me as a consumer. It doesn't speak to the guy next to me as a consumer. It doesn't speak to the truck driver. It doesn't speak to the CEO. It speaks to this one designer and maybe a few other people in that kind of realm. But it doesn't speak to everyone. When you walk through a Wynn property, it is absolutely for everyone. And you do, it's done in a way that I've never seen duplicated anywhere on planet Earth. And I've been through some beautiful hotels where I'm like, this is great. But I can literally be dropped in the middle of a Wynn hotel and not know the name of it, and I immediately know it's a Wynn hotel. There's something about the spacing, about the walls, about the feeling of it, the colors, that is just, it all works perfectly. And I know to get that kind of design, that kind of feeling is almost maddening. I would imagine you guys get yourself pretty close to madness because it is a piece of art.
It is definitely a maddening process, but we're mad, mad at heart. You know, Roger, I'd love for you to build on this, but, you know, I want to share something that you said to me when we first started working, you know, because Anthony, I think what you have referenced has to do in part with the fact that every component, every dimension of the experience at a Wynn property is viewed through the same lens of quality and importance, where if you look at other properties in the industry, there's often sort of a budget stratification where different spaces are given different priority, not just in terms of the investment of dollars, but in terms of the investment of energy, the investment of creative capital. And with the Wynn properties, it is made very clear to the entire design team from the onset that every single dimension of the guest experience within this resort campus is to be loved and to be created with madness at the same level. There are no places that are sort of secondary or tertiary. So to your point, Anthony, about why it appeals to such a broad audience, it's because everybody is regarded with the same respect, the same care, same regard. And there's no hierarchy to saying that one level of customer's experience is more important than another level of customer's experience. Our 3-meal restaurants, our buffets, some of our areas that are less expensive to the customer are treated with every bit as much care and every bit as much investment. And Roger, that's something you made very clear to the entire design team from the onset, is don't think that because we're asking you to do a space that seems less glamorous, that it's a less glamorous commission, because we treat those spaces with equal care and equal bravado.
And that was Steve Wynn's design philosophy. First of all, think like a guest when you design. Every decision should take that into consideration, and assume that that guest is the most experienced, sophisticated, moneyed, well-traveled guest in the world. He directed that Wynn Las Vegas feel totally appropriate, whether you're in jeans and a t-shirt or in a tuxedo. And also, since you're inventing things that have never been seen before, you need to invest all of those inventions with great authenticity and with great with great quality.
Right. So I would then ask, how do you, when you design something, you don't get too stuck with it. You can't get too emotionally connected with it because design changes a lot. In particular, there was a lot of changes to the Encore casino floor. You figure out what works, what doesn't work, taste change and stuff like that. So how do you make sure that you stay ahead of design trends and don't get caught up with doubling down on things that may have not worked or have simply passed their life expectancy?
So you, Glenn, you just said a word that we don't subscribe to, and that is trend. We are not a trend. I saw Roger reacting. Trend is, you know, is a 5-letter word to us that we stay away from.
I'll just use a Vacancy because that was a much better.
Absolutely. 4 syllables, 4 letters. Yeah, we're not a trend-driven company. We are progressive in our thinking. We are dynamic, but we are not trend-driven and we are not experimental. Even the things that we do that are innovative are not experimental. They're not imbued with the same degree of risk that trend and experimentation have. But we think of everything we do as timeless and as being something that will endure. That's really important to us. So we don't look over our shoulders at our peers. We're interested in what people are doing from a business plan standpoint, but we don't refer to other resorts, hotels in the industry as case studies or benchmarks for us. We really do live in a wonderful sort of dreamlike silo, And we design true to our heart, true to our mission, and to what we know delights our guests universally. We don't look to follow trends or stay ahead of a trend. We actually create the experiences that become trends for others to emulate. Very well.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I remember when Ian Schrager came on board with the hotels in New York City, and everyone copied Ian Schrager. Everybody, even when Ian Schrager wasn't being Ian Schrager, they were trying to do Ian Schrager, and he stopped being Ian Schrager a long time ago. He's doing other things. But very rarely do I see anybody try to copy you guys. It's almost like, why even bother?
If you're not entirely original, which requires the risk I spoke of, then you're one hotel behind everybody else,
right?
Which is not a position that either Todd or I are interested in. We don't want to. What's already been created has already been created. That doesn't interest us. We're both creators. We have a drive to see things that have never been seen before. So with the change of the Encore, that was driven by in-house, because we're in-house, because we are so collaborative with our operations team. We meet with our operations team years on end, every day sometimes, or at least every week. And they had a feeling that the casino would be more active if we made those changes.
Right.
Some of them felt that they were right. Some of them feel that they were wrong. Some of them wish that the red chandeliers that I had created in Murano
glass,
back
right?
in Encore. But they're in Boston now.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just have to create
Thank
new
goodness.
Veronese chandeliers, and he can come and stay in my guest room on the Grand Canal in Venice when he does.
Well, Roger and Todd, I want your cell numbers, because I am absolutely staying connected to you both. But you know, I'll tell you a little experience that I had. I'm a poker player, as I said, and I go in the poker room, and the manager, anytime I'm in the city to do a speaking engagement, I always wind up in your poker room. I never win money in your poker room because I'm always looking at the beauty of the room and of the design, swear to God, and I'm not paying attention. And I always find something that speaks to me. One day I get up to the manager, and I'm talking to her, and she said, "Oh, welcome back, Mr. McCurry," and we're talking. And I said to her, "So do you like working here?" And she literally almost started to cry, put her hands out like this, and like pointing to her environment, and said, "That's a silly question."
Well,
yeah.
Another part of our charge, Todd and I, and something Steve directed, is Steve always considered what we did important, but the most important component in any hospitality environment is the team, that is the humans who are actually functioning within that environment. One of the things Todd and I both believe in, we share this philosophy, is that a big part of our responsibility is to make the work they do look effortless. It's not, but with really well-considered planning, we can put the mise en place in the right place in a restaurant so that they can spend more time focusing on the guest, less time fumbling with flatware. So we take that philosophy to every single thing we do. And as Todd stated, we sometimes elevate unexpected areas. We spend as much money on the employee or the staff dining experience as we do on guest dining experiences. Our staff is as important as our guests. And so they relate to the guests on a one-on-one. They feel equal to the guest,
right?
And they're able to have a human relationship rather than a servile.
And that has never been truer than what happened with COVID and how you guys handled that. And it was the standard everyone else tried to attain. And if you had employee confidence and gratitude before, now it's legendary. Now it will be a legendary story that everyone speaks to.
And I'd like to add that I've been fortunate enough to get a back-of-house tour at the Wynn properties, and you can't really tell in places that you're actually back of house, in particular in where people go to do their dining and stuff like that. So I love that you're talking about creating the right psychology within the people that are working there, so that way that they could be free to deliver great hospitality to all the customers.
And I have to throw some credit to somebody who's not with us today, and that is a gentleman that's worked with Roger for 3 decades plus, and I've worked with him as a consultant for 2 decades plus, and that's the executive vice president of architecture for the company, a wonderful man by the name of DeRuyter Butler, and he is a genius at assembling the innumerable technical components that make these buildings work. So not only do they work as an experience emotionally, they are brilliant machines that from an operational standpoint allow this incredibly almost mellifluous operation to be, turning out this consistently. The word consistency isn't a glamorous word, but it's important in our industry to turn out this consistently excellent experience. And those back of house tours really reveal some of that, but an incredible amount of care goes into how these buildings are assembled, because this is a production, this is theater. And so what happens backstage is absolutely essential to the great performance on stage. You can't have a great show in front of the drape if the backstage isn't absolutely, crafted like a fine Swiss watch. And that's what our architecture team does. And they often don't get enough credit, but that is the bones of the body, so to speak.
Right. And speaking of the bones of the body, he's the one who came up with the shape of the building, I believe, like to be like a hug, right? Because it was more emotionally comforting to create a building that kind of arched around. Was it you, Roger?
That doesn't seem right.
No, DeRuyter is genius. He is the very best creator of hospitality and resort hotels, particularly on the scale that DeRuyter approaches them. But the sweep of the building, the curve that you see is a lesson from Bernini that I knew and talked to Steve about. And the swoop on the top of the building was a little cap that Tony Marnell, our contractor, who is also an architect, came up with a solution. I wanted a floating roof that was uplit with columns on the top, so it looked like there was something on the top that you had to get to. Right. That was my concept. But the swoop was what we ended up with. But yeah, DeRuyter is absolutely never given enough credit for the ease of operation that all of our structures have, and also his incredible cooperativeness. We're all housed in the same building, which is unusual in hospitality design, to have the architecture, interiors, purchasing, and construction teams all mesh together in one place. And so architecture is always meeting with interiors, which you see the result of. It's a cohesive, functioning organism.
I want to go back a little bit, and you talk about, you're there for the employees. This is all about ease. And one of the things I know of being, again, an operator for 34 years now, is I don't like design I can't easily clean. And one of the things I've noticed when properties, it's clean. Again, I'll give you my experience because I spent more time in the poker room than most people, is everything is easily clean. The cushions are white and they're spotless. Even the little tray tables that whoever designed them or whoever decided to have them, those tray tables are made of some kind of, I don't know what it's made of, but it's stainless steel, and where you put your drink is easily wipeable. And it's the cleanest tray table in any casino I've ever been. I go to other casinos and those tray tables that I have to put my drink on, I don't even touch because they're disgusting, or the cards are dirty, or the fabric on the table is dirty. And those things, to me, I'm willing to spend more money and more time in your casino, in your hotel, because those things speak to me, especially now after COVID, that people look for hygiene and safety. And I always felt that at Wynn. Again, I literally do have OCD. I don't say it like I'm OCD. I have it. And so it really affects me when I'm there. It literally makes me feel at ease. And I go to other hotels and I can't function because I'm just dealing with stuff that's really affecting me. And so that little thing that you probably don't, well, I know you think of everything, but that you think that maybe some people don't pay attention to, it literally made me a fan of Wynn. Go ahead, Roger.
I bless my parents every single day for my obsessive compulsive disorder.
Okay. Yeah.
We've done if we were born with that. But, Anthony, to your point, there's properties in the industry that start off with that level of care that you've observed in the way that holder is detailed. But what distinguishes us is that our staff really responds to something that's existed in human psychology for years, and that is that people do respond with a greater level of care and respect for an environment that respects and honors them first. And the fact that our team loves working in our building, and it is really their office and it is their home for some of them that, work, 16 hours a day, because they see so much care put into the environment in which they're enveloped every day, they reciprocate that. And so the level of care that comes in our maintenance, in my consideration, is often not just out of obligation of their job description, but it's because they really love the place. They take a great sense of pride and authorship of how it evolves and grows forward. And when you go from our property to others, that's one of the great distinguishing factors, is not just the environment and the service level, but also the state of the asset. We're going to be approaching our 20-year anniversary in several years, but our building is every bit as pristine. When we were shut down during COVID, I had the chance to walk through it with our CEO. And, to be in that building with nobody present, not even while we were under construction was there ever a silence like that, because the activity was building towards our opening day. But for the first time in the building's history, it was completely quiet. And to walk around through a building of this magnitude that has had millions of people through it 15 years later after it was open, and see that it is absolutely sterling in every crevice and every intersection and every material, is really quite awe-inspiring. And the credit goes to our engineering staff and to our housekeeping team. But a lot of their pride in what they put into it comes because they were honored first and foremost by being given an extraordinary environment to work in that made them feel good about themselves as employees. So it's really reciprocal. It's a wonderful sort of circle of life. You give people a great environment and they will care for it. And that's one of our greatest challenges as we age, is how to always keep the diamond polished. Roger and I have talked about this. In this industry, there's always this interest in changing, being trendy and evolving. We actually put more time and energy into making sure that we keep this diamond polished by not just making ad hoc changes and not letting it go off script, because great properties lose their voice, not just with thunderbolts of a big singular renovation. Often it's the accrual of a lot of little things, from a lack of care of maintenance to a strange new addition. And so we're very focused on maintaining the sort of linear legacy of this great asset.
And grand hotels still exist with their original architecture and design. I still go to the Peninsula in Hong Kong because of the experience I had 35, 40 years ago when I first went there. And one of the other reasons that our hotels are beautifully maintained is because not only is our staff in exquisite places caring for the very finest kinds of environments, but they are so well respected and so well taken care of that they remain there for a long time. Marty Brown, the chief of engineering, I met when we were both young kids at the Mirage, building the Mirage Hotel, and he worked at the Golden Nugget. So Marty and I have been together for 40 years.
Wow.
In this hotel. So that's a guy who really cares about it. He's got real investment, and he has not gotten tired of taking care of it. He inspires his team beautifully.
If you ever find a video camera footage of me walking around your property, this is what it'll be like. and because there's millions of people that go through there every year, so I'm not amazed by the design anymore, because all right, I feel it, I taste it, I love it. What I'm amazed at, I'll look at the grout. I'll go in the corner. I'll literally be walking to get some sushi, and I'll go to the corner to see the grout, and it's pristine. Or I put my hand on a wall, and the curvature of the wall is a little bit different, and most people wouldn't notice it, but there's different to it that I haven't really seen before, and it's mind-boggling. I'm telling you, I go and again, Glenn knows, I go to the Wynn, and I'm okay. I'm better. And as an operator, it makes me better, because it makes me realize I've always been a little bit on the edge of trouble when I run a property. I've always been challenging the owner. I've always been challenging the union, always challenging the employees, always with respect, but always with like we have to be better than everyone. And when I walk into a Wynn, I feel it. So tell me about, I have another question about young designers, but when you walk through the corridor going towards the poker room, there seems to be something going on with some walls. Is there anything that I'm noticing or feeling that's different, or is it just, the whole feeling?
And while you're preparing your answer to that, let me say we got a lot of great questions for you guys out in the audience, and we're going to start to ask those in just a second. Roger, take it away.
Todd, I think you should take that.
Yeah, there were actually walls there, Anthony. You're right. We were doing construction of our new restaurant, which just opened a few weeks ago. So what you saw was, in fact, temporary walls that were redefining that environment that were going to be taken down shortly after you left. That room has now been
but you didn't know. But you didn't know it was a temporary wall, right?
Right. All of our construction walls, our team in China calls it hoarding, are fully finished elevations. So these are not just plywood walls that look like there's work in progress. They're finished with wall covering, with moldings, with art, with sconces. They are
sconces.
They're completely integral to the aesthetic that surrounds them.
So I felt something different. That tells you how obsessed I am with your design. Okay.
Yeah.
And I have a question before you go to the audience. When you have not a young designer, but a designer that's been around for 5 or 10 years, they come to work for you and they're brilliant, and that's why you bring them in. But there are a few bad habits. Like, what's the first thing that you try to infuse or inspire into a new designer, or to I shouldn't say new, but to a person that comes from a different house, comes from a different background, but has that natural feel that you need in your business, but has a few bad habits? Like, how do you motivate them? How do you change those bad habits?
It's actually the young designers that haven't developed the bad habits yet.
No, I know. That's why I'm giving you the hard question. I'm giving you a question. I'm not saying about the young, because that's an easy one. I'm giving you the harder one, where you just really like this person, but they got a few edges that you need to change, or you just stay away.
Roger and I are both, we're mentors of our staff, and it requires lots of communicating, lots of time side by side at the table. It's communication that's verbal as well as illustrative. We draw, we sketch, we lecture, and it's talking through the entire process. We're designing a new project right now, and we have about 20 different suite, room, and villa types, quite a collection of accommodations within this particular tower. And the conversations could be me just handing them my drawings, but it's not, because there are some younger people on the team, some that are legacy members of the team, but we spend a huge amount of time articulating the why and the how and the reasons collectively. So there'll be a work session that may only need 2 or 3 people at the table, but I often encourage everybody to come over. We have big work tables in the middle of the studio where everybody can see and hear. And I invite everybody to the table to become a student of that conversation and to understand the nuances of what we're doing and why. And a huge amount of time is spent discussing operational issues, technical issues, as much as the overall creative directive. They're perfectly balanced, because if it is an extraordinary feeling experience or an extraordinary looking experience, but it doesn't function, then it's all for naught. So it's really a constant balance of right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain. And I think Roger's process is very similar. That's why he and I have worked so well together for so long.
And one of the things that I find I need to indoctrinate in every designer who comes to work for us, and Todd does this as well, I've seen him do it, is to teach them about the history of our profession, our craft, the history of architecture, design, and even art. I didn't study architecture design. I studied art history and was a studio artist. And so I come to design in a different way, and I find that they don't know what's gone on before. It's not taught in schools, unfortunately. And once they understand why our decisions are based on lessons learned of what not to do and lessons learned of what to do, they have a richer experience in the design world, and they're better equipped to anticipate the next room.
Right. So let's move ahead to a question from the audience. I love this one. What are some of the greatest challenges with any of the specific projects you overcame? And let me add, overcame them as well. Roger, maybe you could take us back and share one of those with us.
Well, the reason I stayed with Steve for 40 years is the greatest challenge was always ourselves, was overcoming, was realizing that we could go further than we thought we could go, that we could achieve more than we felt we could achieve in the time allotted. He dared us to dream, as you've heard. And so I think just it's not being afraid of going into risk and into places that no one has ever dared go before. I think that was the greatest challenge that I faced consistently. And Steve was always excited about those challenges. Steve Wynn was a true explorer of the art and architecture world. That really excited him. And so it excited us. And so we got to places we didn't know we could go.
Right. What about, let me ask you another question. I can't find it on there, but someone was asking about scents, and I'll add to that. How does scent design and sound design play into the overall experience? Sometimes we think about just the stuff that we look at as opposed to the other things that add to the overall experience.
Todd?
With sound design, you mean audio, the atmosphere,
acoustics,
and the smellitizers and all that kind of stuff.
Well, at our properties, the audio that you hear in the background, and it really is background music. It's not foreground. We never want to be foreground. The background music is intended to basically fill in the blanks and establish kind of an emotional tenor to the space. But that is a very highly curated list, a playlist of music. It is not just something streaming from a website or a service that provides music to hotels, which do exist. Our lists, our playlists are constructed by a group of people that spend hours screening every single song. Even the lyrics are listened to make sure that there's nothing objectionable, but there is a definite emotional tenor to the music that you hear in our property. And it's not just from a streaming service. Every song is chosen with intention, and it changes throughout the day. So what you hear in the areas throughout the hotel in the morning is very different than what you're going to hear at noon versus what you're going to hear before you go to dinner, or if after dinner if you're going to one of our clubs. So it's constructed, and there are crescendos and decrescendos throughout the day that very much support the mood of the guest while they're in the property.
So my question,
and how you hear it is important. Our casinos have upholstered wall cover so that you hear a fuller, more resonant sound. Our restaurants are attended to so that you can not only feel the vibe of the restaurant and feel that it's really lively, but so that you can hear the conversation across the table. We also do use scent, but we use a fresh cut, fresh mown lawn scent. I'm losing battery power, so I'm going to have to switch to something else. Give me a minute.
All right, we hope you come back real soon because we need to talk about the Roger Thomas collection. So go take care of that, and we'll see you in just a second.
So Todd, my question for you is, give me an incident, kind of backing to Glenn's question.
Yeah.
When you're challenged with something from Roger or from Steve, where
Or from Mr. Maddox today.
Yeah.
Right. Or Mr. Maddox, or where you would, where it was like, okay, yes, sir. All right. I'll think about that. And then you go back to your office and you said to yourself, are they out of their minds? And somehow you figured it out. Like, what was the biggest one that you were like, this is not doable, but somehow you figured it out?
So the most recent example of that, and it wasn't daunting, but it was definitely a challenge for the team. Things have changed in the last 6 months. In the last year also, even before COVID, things were starting to change. And we had a room renovation underway on paper only. The work had not been initiated in construction, but it was a project that was going to be several $100 million. And it was beautifully conceived. It was designed and documented, but there was a realization for a number of reasons that the investment was actually a bit too rich. And so we were asked to go back to the drawing board and start entirely anew for a budget that was 30% less than the initial budget. Wow. And the design team was pretty daunted by that because it's a substantial reduction in cost. But, there's a lot of expensive work out in the industry that is very expensive, but doesn't necessarily justify the money that was spent. So we subscribed to that philosophy and said, okay, if we've got 30% less money, that doesn't mean that we have 30% less ideas or 30% less creative wherewithal. On the contrary, we have to compensate for the reduction in investment with an increase in our intellectual and creative investment. And so we went back to the drawing board and said that ultimately, no matter what something costs, great taste and timeless design is what prevails and endures. And so we approached the project anew with 30% less of a budget, but delivered something that looked every bit and felt every bit as rich as the initial budget. And so that's an example of the kind of challenge that we're going to see increasingly in the business, not just with us, but we have to increasingly be more and more fiscally responsible with regard to how much we're spending and what the real return on it is, not just from a financial ROI, but also from an experiential and emotional ROI. But that's a challenge that's going to be universal in our industry because budgets are being continually reduced.
Right. Can I ask you what the status is of the property that was proposed for across the street? Do you know where you're at with that?
We
right
do.
now?
Yeah, we are constantly planning. We had a couple of versions of studies and master plans that have been done. And it's actually kind of a wonderful thing, happy accident, so to speak, that we didn't proceed with some of our earlier plans because a couple of the things that have been done in the market on neighboring sites, including the expansion of the Las Vegas Convention Center, have informed how we would look at that site now. And those weren't things that would have been known about had the project proceeded a couple of years ago. But now with the Las Vegas Convention Center completing and some of the new properties on that street about to open in the next year, it allows us to look differently at that neighborhood and what it really needs. So our process is that when you see a built product from Wynn, we have gone through dozens of iterations, dozens of explorations, no stone unturned. So what you see is the best version of all the studies, all the distillations that we've done. It's not just the first thing out of the gate. So when that project is developed, it will be the result of an even more rigorous understanding about the context, the market, and it'll be that much more successful because of that.
Great.
You said something very interesting I want to get back to. You said just because the investment went down 30%, the budget went down 30%, that doesn't mean our creativity goes down. Matter of fact, it's got to go up 30%.
Right, because expectations are still going up, no matter what your price point is.
Go ahead, Roger.
This was the first project Todd did, this 30% reduction. The first result we saw of Todd's taking the helm. And I got to view the result of this. And I called both Todd and our largest stockholder, by the way, and said, this is proof, absolute, that Todd is the right guy to take this company forward for the next 20 years. It is genius. It looks more expensive than the room that I was 30% over. It was my design that was the 30% overage. And Todd's design was absolute sheer genius. I was so impressed. So
thank you, Roger.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. So I want to back up a little bit.
30% less is really creative problem solving.
Right, but Todd, the reason I wanted to go back to that because I thought it was so important that that's the way you build teams, and that's how you basically, when you're ready to step down, that's how you build the next Todd or the next Roger. Is that you say, okay, we have a challenge. Nobody likes it. Nobody wants to look at this and say, okay, we have a 30% less. But you know what? We are not 30% less smart or 30% less as a team. We've got to now say we're in the room for a reason.
Yes.
Todd-Avery I'm here for a reason. And the reason they chose me or I chose to be here over anybody else is because when they come to me with a challenge like this, hold my beer. Here I go. And I just love the fact that Roger, again, knowing you a little bit, you would never say that. That is completely authentic, completely genuine. So as wonderful as that is, as wonderful as the team is, is there a space, and you don't have to mention the space, is there a space that you walk through, either one of you in your career, that you're like, oh, it's just not exactly perfect. It's not exactly the way I wanted it. Does that happen?
Yes, I don't think every space. We never every space. Yeah,
That's so true.
Absolutely. But see, Roger and I didn't even rehearse that, and we both reacted it. Of course. I mean, we are obsessive. We are maniacal. It's very hard for us to put the paintbrush down. Very hard. You know, when you are a master painter, you will be working those eyes and that nose until the last minute. You know, you're racing the oils as they dry. And it's very much the same way for us with our spaces. We are our own biggest critics. It looks complete. It looks wonderful to the guest. But Roger and I always feel and see things that we feel like we could have continued painting on. It's just our nature. And that's what fuels us to keep going, because when the next project comes along, we build on that experience.
That's funny, because that's exactly the way I feel as a writer, broadcaster, and stuff like that. When I'm in it, this is amazing, this is great, and then I go back to it, and I'm like, ugh, what was I liking about that? It's horrible.
You know, it's interesting, Todd and Roger, because I probably tend to be more like you as far as maniacal and obsessive, that I actually stop myself, and I'm okay. And I don't do that to myself, because early on I did that to myself. And I started reading a book called Burnout. And as I'm reading the book called Burnout, I'm like, well, I shouldn't be reading this book if I wasn't burned out. And I got myself so obsessive and so 19 hours a day, 7 days a week, turning these hotels around, that I literally have to say, once I put the paintbrush down, it's good. And I just have to say to myself, accept it. And so, yeah, it's exhausting being us.
I say to myself, what did I learn from this? Because I know another experience is around the corner.
Right.
Another challenge, another opportunity. I don't really think of things as challenges. I think of them as opportunities for creative problem solving. And there's always another one. So as long as you learn and don't repeat your mistakes, that's good.
So what is the biggest challenge now with COVID and design? And, you know, one of the things that we've heard from designers is, I'm not designing a hospital. You know, I refuse to design something. We're in a pandemic, but, you know, in 2 or 3 years, or hopefully even sooner, you know, hopefully this will be in our rearview mirror. I'm not going to design something for a pandemic. How do you handle this?
Well, I think the greatest, there's many challenges, but one of the challenges that's really, I think sort of, it's just present and we can't do anything about it right now, is barriers. You know, even a plexiglass or a glass screen between two humans that are supposed to be interacting in a forum where gracious hospitality is being presented, that is an impediment to real human connection. Also, face masks, when over half the face is obscured and you're lacking human expression, it really makes it hard to deliver something with the same sincerity and humanity that exists underneath that mask. It's there, but our staff communicates universally with something called a smile, with a bright eye, with, you know, a lift of the mouth when somebody's talking and they say something fun or engaging. All of that is now obscured. So you have barriers to seeing facial expression, which is essential in delivering really sincere hospitality experiences graciously. And you have physical barriers. You have pieces of glass, you have stanchions, you have dividers. And all of that is antithetical to what our business is all about in the hospitality industry. But it's here for now. So we've been working to make the most invisible barriers, figuratively speaking, as possible, but they're still there and people feel them. You know, there's a conviviality and a socialization that occurs between people in a restaurant, people at a poker table, people in a theater, people in a bar. And when you're separating them and you're putting barriers between them, it really impedes the thing that humans need, which is connection with other humans. And that's a challenge that is present and that we're not going to be able to overcome anytime soon.
Yeah, and I would say one of the things that you were ahead of the game with was more of a touchless guest room, because you have it powered by Alexa. I happened to stay there in February before all of this happened. It was the first time in a hotel room I really got comfortable with and enjoyed that particular feature. So I think that's something that you have as a component that adds to guest satisfaction as opposed to being a takeaway. And Todd-Avery, I got to tell you, when I was over there walking around the casino's floors on June 5th, things may have changed, but I liked what you did where it was like a choose your own safety adventure. There were a lot of barriers at some tables, but no barriers at others. At, say, like a blackjack table, you only had 2 gaming positions instead of 5 or 6. So I like that you were looking towards getting people to feel comfortable in the way that they would feel comfortable, as opposed to you trying to tell them how they should feel comfortable.
Yeah, there's guidelines and rules in place that we have to adhere to, but it's helpful for the guest to feel like it is something that benefits them as opposed to something that is restrictive to them. There's a fine line on how you make it feel like it's an amenity and an enhanced experience versus something that's imposed upon them. And so even, if you walk into our properties, we have the thermal image scanning that checks the temperature of our arriving guests. We're the only property that I've seen where our guests can walk seamlessly from the porte cochere into our lobby without any break in their cadence. They flow through very smoothly. We hand them a mask. We offer sanitizer for their hands. But you'll see at a lot of other hotels, guests are being queued, they're being put in stanchions, and they're having to do the same thing in the hotel that they just did perhaps at the airport where they came from. They're because it's adding to their anonymity, which masks have already done. And we've really worked contrary to that, where we still have individual recognition, direct connection to the guest, and a seamlessness in the way we introduce taking a temperature or handing somebody
seamlessness indeed. Producer Jeff and I walked from the parking garage into the facility, and the only thing I noticed is you had more limited access on entrances. But I walked in, everyone said hi. I didn't think twice. When I was walking out, I noticed that you had the thermal temperature detectors. It was just that subtle that you were doing what you needed to do, but you weren't interfering with the experience that I was about to have. And I think
it was very clear when they did that, because they went to 7 hotels that day. I was going to go, but I couldn't make it. And it was clear that you guys have set the bar, because that's the kind of environment I want to walk into. I want to make sure everybody's temperature's checked. I want to make sure employees are wearing masks. But he said something to me that really spoke to me. He goes, Anthony, there's some tables that have plexiglass, but if you want to play blackjack, you can play at a table, with one person on one end, one person on the other, and it's just 2 people. And I was like, yes, I'm in. And then there's one casino that actually has a barrier in front of you and 2 barriers on the side. And as much as I love playing, I just couldn't do it. I just, because of my.
Well, I think, Todd-Avery, I think you've got some of those too, because again, it's choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. I feel very claustrophobic in that environment. And at Wynn, I just watching it, I wasn't even there, and I felt like, it felt so. So there must have been a lot of thought into that. And yes, Roger.
I think that's exactly it. The same team that is figuring out how to enchant you because they are in-house and they are given great currency for their value and for their opinion at the operational table. That same team that enchants you is figuring out how to continue that enchantment in this unenchanting time. Todd has been working diligently with his entire group to come up with ideas to not let you know that the thermal scan is there, to make it a human, hospitable guest experience. It's really his team that's made the difference, I think, as well as working so closely meshed with our operational team, because for every solution there's a concern, and that needs to be solved. And but Todd's team knows how to handle that from experiential and aesthetic, visual, as well as sensual concerns.
And our operational team has been incredible. We're the only property that I've seen, or we were at least the first, if somebody's caught up with us, that has, beautiful place to purposefully place your mask while you're dining and while you're drinking. That's sanitized and disposed of after you leave. A beautiful debossed card that has a mask graphic. You know, everything's been thought of. Wonderful little QR scanners at every table. The level of detail to which we've gone to still demonstrate that we've anticipated you, because anticipation and anticipatory service is key to delivering hospitality at an elevated level. And so everything that we've done has been about communicating that we do anticipate you, we are ready for you, we await you, we welcome you. Our moves have not been reactive. There have been guidelines issued by the state and by government authorities, but so much of what we did actually preempted those guidelines to the point where a lot of the authorities actually looked at what we were establishing as our company protocol and adopted some of that as the broad standard for everybody else.
Right. You were the first ones out of the gate with a very comprehensive document. I remember when that came out, how great it was. All right. It's after 1 o'clock, so we're starting to run down on time here. Roger?
I just want to say that is also due to the extraordinary leadership of Matt Maddox, our CEO.
Absolutely.
He has been right there with everybody in person solving these problems, and he is inspirational. He kept them all on board, which by itself is Herculean. But he has led because of his superior intelligence and because he really, really cares. He's a great human.
That's awesome. And
that every day, he lived this every day. He hired an epidemiologist, and he became an absolute student of what was occurring, and was actually invited to the White House to speak on what we had done. It has become quite accomplished in this space. It's been an extraordinary effort and really precedent-setting in the industry.
Great leader.
And as someone from the outside looking in, that's exactly the feeling I know that Anthony and I both had. Roger, you're an emeritus now. You're kind of retiring, but we were joking before the show. You're not really retiring. Of course, you have the Roger Thomas collection, and you've been doing more designs for that. But you're also working on some home projects as well. Anthony, how cool would that be to have Roger Thomas do a design for your home?
You know what would be even cooler? Is to have Roger come on my new show and be my designer with me for one of my projects.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a good designer, but I'm really a crappy client.
So tell us a little bit about the Roger Thomas collection.
Well, the Roger Thomas collection happened the same way Todd's products happened. In an effort to create a very unique environment, you have to invent everything in the environment. So you learn how to make everything from lighting to furniture to the passementerie that edges the drapery. So the Roger Thomas collection, with Steve and Elaine Wynn's complete backing, started producing these unique pieces so that we could use them first. And when we went back to get them, they would still be a product that we could get without ordering 500. And so I've continued to do that. And I've been working on new product for Samuel & Sons, which will open soon, which will launch soon for passementerie. I have a bedding collection with Fabric Innovations. I have new lighting with Boyd. In fact, won Interior's coveted award for Best of Year last year with part of that collection. I am working on new designs for Quintus, a furniture company that I'm very involved with in Los Angeles, for which we do very high-end bespoke bench-made furniture. I'm working on new designs for Rocky Mountain Hardware. La Brazil is going to launch a new collection of guest room and bathroom amenities. So I don't like the grass to grow.
That's for sure. I'm also a big fan of oh my God, Deborah Herman over at Fabric Innovation. She's pretty freaking awesome. Yeah. And if you guys ever fly Delta and you get to go first class, that's her stuff up there in the first class cabin. I know. So that's pretty awesome. I know you know that, Roger.
Well, I have to tell you, it's interesting how many times the team here, when we're sourcing something, we'll be looking through a catalog or a list of available product. And many of Roger's items that he's designed very discreetly have the tag that it's designed by Roger Thomas. And it's interesting how we'll select something, and only after we print the cut sheet and have fallen in love with something and decided it's going into the job, do we then see the little thing that says designed by Roger Thomas.
And then you say, of course.
Right.
I'd be remiss if I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, yeah. When it comes to the people on your procurement team, here's Cody Herzog, who I think is Laura's kid over there. I know she's been a big part of the procurement team over there, and is an absolutely fantastic professional.
So
Brilliant purchasing director.
Yeah, we have an amazing purchasing and construction group. Our purchasing team and construction team are extraordinary.
And that's interesting, because that whole process that most people are in the building or design or hospitality industry, they don't realize how many people are in that chain, and how many people, once you have this vision, to bring it to life is a different story. To have the vision is hard enough, but to bring it to life is probably almost more impossible than to have the vision to begin with. So one of the things I want to ask is, I would be remiss if I let you gentlemen go without asking the question that I've had for 34 years. What is the secret to bathroom lighting?
Ah, interesting. I have my theory. It's all got to start with the face. You've got to have really flattering lighting that makes people look like the best version of themselves, which is usually shadowless lighting, full fill lighting, just like you would find on a makeup artist salon styling table, backstage at a theater or in a great salon. So full lighting around the face that's shadowless, evenly balanced, that renders color in the skin correctly. Then in addition to that, you want to supplement the space with a nice balance of task lighting, as well as sort of ambient lighting and sparkle. But it's all got to start with what's happening at the vanity and how somebody looks, and then you build from there.
I totally agree. I think side lighting is really important, not only in bathrooms, but in all public spaces, so that we don't walk around with all of those shadows. And I think light surfaces in the bathroom that reflect all the lights that are on the ceiling, using up all that wattage, reflecting back.
Oh, we lost his signal. I'm sure he'll pop back. Oh, there he is.
Yes.
There you go, Roger. You're back.
All right. So you were saying the last thing we heard is light surfaces that reflect back.
Yes.
Nope. I don't know. All right, Todd.
Yes, light surfaces on the countertop of the bathroom, because you're using all that wattage.
Yeah.
Might as well get some of it under here.
Yeah.
Right.
So that seems like I need a whole class, or at least a week worth of classes, to really understand it. But there is an art or science to it, and most people get it wrong.
And I should mention, Anthony, we, in addition to our purchasing, construction, architecture, interiors, finance, we also have our own lighting department. So we have integrated into our organization a lighting design team. So we do all of that in-house as well. It really is a complete circle of intelligence that creates these projects.
No, and that's the thing. When you look at a big company and they're like, well, if we do it in-house, it's expensive, right? But doing it, especially when you have projects like you guys work on, when you do it with I'm trying not to say outhouse, when you're doing out of the house, and you're using contractors, it costs you double or triple sometimes, because of the aggravation, because of the mistakes, and you don't have complete control of it. Yes, Roger.
So let me say that the guy who heads that, Tom Kowalczyk, used to be an engineer at the Mirage. We had a huge lighting problem with the casino. I called in 4 different lighting designers: New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, these huge high-powered thinkers to solve the problem at the Mirage. They couldn't do it. Tom Kowalczyk, an engineer on our team, said, "Do you mind if I try?" Went to the back of house, used some tin snips and a couple of pieces of shiny aluminum, came out and fixed the problem before our very eyes.
Right. And then he was the guy.
And became our lighting designer.
Yeah, he leads our team now. He leads our team. Yeah.
Right. And again, the expense to bring in 4 of the superstars, which, once you have superstar in your name, you get a lot more expensive. And then you have it from a guy that was on your team. And not only that, it inspires everyone else, that like it inspired you, that our own team, why are we going outside when we have the best and the brightest on our team? And sometimes, and that's been a problem with when I was working for people, it's like, I'm not that smart. And all of a sudden I become a consultant, I become more expensive, I become smarter. No,
That's
I
right.
was on your team 10 years ago, and I'm the same guy. You know, I got a TV show, and I became smarter. No, I'm the same guy. I'm not as smart as everybody thinks I am, but I got a TV show. So when you have somebody in-house, you really got to develop that talent.
Well, Anthony, I got to tell you though, actually, we are the more expensive alternative. Consultants actually are much more cost effective. We are expensive because on our payroll, there's a 30% burden on everybody. It's
Right.
very difficult to get a lot of the talent in this industry to move to this desert community, far from an ocean or a mountain. And we are expensive, but that expense is an investment. It's how you build consistency. When you're working with a consultant that has a lot of different masters, although they may be talented, their attention is divided. And when you work with us, we need your undivided attention. We really need to actually feel like we own you in some ways, and you have to kind of pretend like we do. I know I had to sort of pretend that was the case for many years when I was a consultant. So we're actually the more expensive option, but it's what allows us to deliver with total quality control, absolute quality control, and only we know what we do best. And it's very difficult to indoctrinate outside consultants sometimes into certain things that we need done a certain way. We might hire somebody for a cameo appearance where there's a little bit more flexibility in the way that the space is conceived. There's other things that we do that we have a very specific vision of what it is we're looking for, and it's best for us to do it ourselves.
Wow, that's interesting. So basically just told us the story about why you were brought on to run the division instead of just them outsourcing work to you, right? That's awesome. So what else could you tell us before we wrap up today that's absolutely essential, perhaps for somebody that is interested in being a hospitality designer? How do you keep your mind open? How do you keep learning? What do you think about in order to be the best that you can possibly be every single day in your career?
Roger, you go first.
I look at an awful lot of art in person, if at all possible. I look at a lot of beautifully designed buildings. I go to every museum I possibly can. I draw every day, which is really important. And I read a lot.
Yeah.
I'm not so much, I never look on social media for inspiration ever.
Right.
Because that's already been done.
Right.
I look for things that had been done 150 years ago for a spark in me that gets me thinking of something new.
So I won't see you on Pinterest anytime soon.
Yeah, and I was about to say, I don't want to insult an icon, but that was the wrong answer. You watch No Vacancy live every single day. That's
different. That's discussion, and that kind of discussion is what Todd and I do in our studios every day with our teams. Just what we're doing right now. So that's very valid.
That is a super essential point, though, is getting feedback from people as well, Roger.
Yeah.
Sitting with the silent screen of Pinterest things that have already been done doesn't interest me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I post on Pinterest. I have a lot of people who want to see Pinterest and what I'm doing. And I think it's a great vehicle for letting people know what I'm doing because I'm a producer of goods.
Right.
And I look for goods on Pinterest and I look for goods on Instagram, but I don't use it to find design solutions, is what I'm saying.
Right, absolutely.
I use it often to find product and new product. It's great.
Yeah.
Todd, did you want to answer that?
It's very similar. We feed ourselves the same way. I constantly have a stack of books that I am immersed in, and inspiration for design can come to me just from words, not always visuals. Although I love going to museums. I grew up in museum towns, and I find great satisfaction in looking at the work of the great masters. I also find inspiration in music. I'm very inspired by the construction of a song or a symphony. I can envision spaces when I really allow my mind to start decoding the components of a piece of music or orchestration. I often assign some of my design elements in the space to specific instruments within a composition. So I'm very inspired by music. I'm very inspired by literature. But I'm a dreamer like Roger is. And my inspirations don't come from things that have already been built, although I do admire the classics and I admire history, especially in terms of the discipline that they teach us about, rational design. But the actual final idea that we arrive at for a space usually comes from a space that's comes from sources that are much more diverse than anything that exists today for us to look at.
You've both been in this business for decades, and you both have the curiosity and the passion of a first-year college student. You still have that just complete curiosity, and that's what I think makes the greats the greats. It's not what I did yesterday. It's what I'm going to do tomorrow and next year. And you can't teach it. You can't. It's born. And when I'm listening to both of you, I'm out of breath because you say every word with just that passion and curiosity that is inspiring.
Well, that's so nice of you to say, Anthony. And I'll tell you, it's wonderful for that compliment. Although I would say there's a dark side to it for me, because I know that in my work sessions here at the studio, and I know it's the same for Roger, because he and I have been in work sessions together, but I'm very impatient with people that are not curious and not learned. And so I'll be in a work session where there is a deafening silence. Silence rings very loud to me. And when that happens, it's because I feel like the audience either is disengaged or uninformed, both of which are deadly to a design collaboration or a charrette. And I will stop a conversation and ask people if they know the references I'm making, or I'll ask them to give me an analogous experience. And when they can't, that's when my patient really runs thin, and I will start giving assignments to people of what they need to become aware of, that they need to go back and study and learn. And then we'll reconvene. But I expect everybody to always be curious, no matter how evolved they are in their career. I love working with curious, fascinated people. I am not interested in people that feel like they've arrived at a level of mastery where they don't have to learn anymore. Roger approaches everything as if he is a student, and I do the same thing, which we don't necessarily have to do. We could find stasis in our careers and our accomplishments and what we've already done and live very comfortably in that space. But I like the challenge of not knowing how to approach the next challenge and immersing myself and becoming a student of that new endeavor. That's exhilarating to me. It is scary. It can be intimidating. There's great vulnerability there, but it is absolutely exhilarating.
That's one of the things that young designers or less experienced designers need to get confidence in, and that is saying, I don't know, tell me. They need to ask what you mean constantly. We're happy to explain. It's okay if you don't know. What's not okay is not knowing and remaining in ignorance.
Well, what you just both said, Todd and Roger, I think that really is everything for a young person or even an older person that's been doing this right. Like, if no one's ever listened to the show before, if no one's ever listened to anything we said, please listen to the last 5 minutes of what Todd-Avery and Roger said. It is critical. Once you arrive, doesn't mean you arrived. You're in the room in the major leagues. I used to say when you're on my set, this is serious. They push a button and we're in front of millions of people in 120 countries. You're in the major leagues. Act like it. And if you're going to act like it, that means be curious. That means question us. That means push us. That means challenge us. But that means pay attention, be passionate, and be curious. But you're in the room for a reason. You're not in the room sitting next to you at a design table or sitting next to Roger at a design table if you're not talented. Now, okay, so what? Doesn't matter. Now you have to get to the next level, because once you're in the major leagues, the impatience, and I've been guilty of that, the curiosity and the absolute zero tolerance for really, I don't know, I'm not sure. Like that, we don't live in that world. But when you're in that world and you're around those people, that is just, and you fly at a different level, in a different air. You breathe a different air. Colors are different to you when you're around those people. And guess what? And we've all been in those rooms. Some people just don't get it. And that's okay. That's when we promote them to customer and say, you can come through our front doors. You just can't come through the back door.
Yeah. I love that. All right, Roger, maybe tell us about one big failure that you overcame in life. And then after that, I want to talk a little bit about your final project that you completed.
So my biggest challenge in life had to do with a disease, and that is the disease of addiction. And I thought that it was helping me. But fortunately, I had a lot of people surrounding me who knew that it was not, who helped me find the kind of help I needed to move past it. And that was 25 years ago. And I include Steve and Elaine Wynn as being integral in that. And what it did was it made me, I still remained afraid of my own voice and my own authenticity, but I came to realize that that was the only value I had when I was in any room, and that everyone was afraid of their own voice and their own authenticity, and that it was a voyage of revealing that together. So that allowed me, that particular moment, if you look at my work, Treasure Island was the last hotel I did with that problem. Bellagio was the first I did when I was working on it. So I think that's revelatory.
I think it really is. Although I am sad that the current owners got rid of the pirate show. That was a thing that I really thought was cool.
But Roger, thank you for sharing that, because people look at you and look at what you've built and look at your career and your station in life and like, I want to be him.
Right.
You know, I want that. He's so lucky.
So I was also I had a lot of difficulty as a student. I am severely dyslexic. So I've had other challenges. It was very difficult for me to read as a child, but I liked the result of reading, so I stayed with it. And I read all the time, and now I read really well, even though I'm severely dyslexic.
Wow.
It's like going to the gym. I wasn't really very strong when I went to the gym the first time. But after several years, I was pretty strong.
Yeah, and that, you know, and I'm glad you shared that, because a lot of people don't. It's like to make the cake, you got to see how you make it. And again, you got to break some eggs, and I can't tell you just how in love I am that you said that, because I know there's people that struggle out there. I'm very fortunate. I haven't had an addiction, but a lot of people around me have, and to see what you've accomplished in life. Sometimes you're your own worst enemy, and when you have love around you, they help you get there. So thank you so much. It's a blessing to share that story. Thank you.
Now, I had the opportunity to spend my last trip before COVID was at several resorts, and I round up at the Wynn and the Encore for Radisson Hotel Group's annual conference. And we had Jim Alderman, their current CEO, on there. So go check out that past show. But I got to tell you, Roger, I love that pavilion out there. I love what everyone did with the expansion project. What was that experience like for you going into it, knowing that, hey, this is going to be my last big thing before I go and pretend to retire?
Well, it was one of those really exciting projects because it was all planned to be around a lake that never happened.
The Lake of Dreams.
Yes. And so we designed it all for view, and the golf course had been closed. It had been disengaged. Part of it had been deconstructed. And we realized as we were building it that we were going to open the South Convention facility, which doubled the space of the convention center at Wynn, long before a lake could ever get ready. So we had to back up, reinstitute the golf course, reconstruct a couple of holes, reorganize the view from there, and I think it ended beautifully. But that pavilion was supposed to be on a lake. But if you didn't know that, if you
you don't know that,
planning it, it's a brilliant experience. And that was the brainchild of Chris Flatt, who I've also worked with my entire career, our director of convention sales. She saw the need for that. She described exactly what she wanted, and we were able to, DeRuyter and I, we were able to work some sketches, get her over with her team, and fine-tune that into the space it is today. It's a great experience. Thank you for mentioning that.
And, Glenn, I have to mention that conference that you attended with Radisson was one of the first 3 events we had in that new space. You inaugurated it.
I know. I was very blessed to be able to see it and experience it, and I love the two levels, not just pavilion, great ballrooms up top, the smaller meeting rooms down below with another great area space. It was very well done. Your whole group could be in one area away from everybody. I absolutely love that. Anthony, anything else you want to ask these gentlemen before we continue to impose on their time?
Sometimes in life you zig when you should zag. I wish I zagged over to Vegas early in my career, because if I would have had the opportunity to work with you gentlemen, it would have been an absolute just an inspiration. And seeing so many hoteliers work for really great people and working for some people that aren't so great. When you work for great people like yourselves and you're on a team, again, don't suffer fools. That's where people don't understand. Working around people like you and in that environment, you better come up every single day and you better be ready every single day, because every single day is the bottom of the ninth. You have to win the game. You have to hit a grand slam. And I feed in that environment. That's why I love the military. So there must be thousands and tens of thousands of people that you've worked with that felt that inspiration, and you've made them better. And I just wish I had the opportunity to work with you when I was much younger, and I would have learned a lot.
Feelings mutual.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
We share your passion.
Well, thank you.
But here we are.
So,
the convergence still happened.
Yeah, but somehow I'm stuck with Glenn instead of you two.
Wow.
That's not too bad.
That makes me better every day.
And I don't know about stuck with Glenn.
Yeah. Hey, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Before we wrap up, it's a big tradition over here to allow you to give a good shameless plug. So, Roger, maybe one for the Roger Thomas collection, anything you're thinking of, and then Todd-Avery, we'll let you promote Wynn. So, Roger, take it away.
You can find the Roger Thomas collection at therogerthomascollection.com. And I also can be found on Pinterest and on Instagram, of course, and most other social media platforms. And look for all of my new product for my wonderful partners at Samuel & Son, at La Brazil, at Boyd Lighting, at Fabric Innovations, at Quintus, and so many others. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Todd-Avery?
Well, one of the great parts of the Wynn story has been the not knowing what's coming next, but knowing that whatever it is going to be fantastic. And we have some incredible things on the boards and in the ground that are all going to be making their appearance over the next year. So if you think that anything has slowed down during the COVID, the real slowdown has been in the movement of people traveling, but there's been no slowdown in what we are dreaming on behalf of our guests all over the world. We've got great stuff on the boards and coming out of the ground. And so the next time you come back, there'll be some wonderful new surprises for you that, although new, will feel like they've always been here, which is exactly one of the things we always strive to do.
And our industry needs to hear that. We really need to hear that. That's an inspiration to all of us. And we will be coming to Vegas soon. So Todd, I would love to meet with you in person and do the show in person with me, you, and Glenn when we get there. It'll probably be sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
But we really, we were waiting for some inspiration the last couple of weeks because of the numbers and everything. Things are slowed down again. But hearing that you guys are hard at work and you're going to bring some great ideas going forward makes me real happy.
Big stuff too. Big stuff.
Wow. If
All right.
that's scary.
Yeah. Gentlemen, thank you so much. What an honor and a privilege it was to have you both here today. So thank you so much. Anthony, I'm going to wrap up the show, but thank you for being here. Wow. Oh, wow. Now, before we wrap that part up, before anybody tries going offline, Anthony and I are going to be featured in an article that somebody's putting together. So if you would like to make a comment right now about what this show means to you, what the show has done for you, what you hope the show is all about, leave that comment in there, and you might get noted. You might get put in that article as well. And Anthony, they're looking for a quote from you about what the show does for the industry.
Well, you know what? It just did it. It was a great example. We went to the altar. We went to church today. Right. and what happens, right? People have faith. Mm-hmm. The reason Wynn and the people around Wynn work like glue together is because they have faith. They have faith that they can do something that hasn't been done before. Mm-hmm. They have belief in each other that when somebody says 30% less budget, it's going to be bigger and better anyway.
Yep. And
that there's one way to do it. And the way to do it is our team being together. And so I think it was a great example of why the Wynn experience works so well. It's because people are impatient, people are curious, and people are real professionals, and it takes a lot of work. But think about them. They've been around for decades. They've collaborated on projects, the biggest projects in the world. And do they seem they even look tired?
No, Roger's claiming to be retired, but he's not.
No, tired. Do they look tired?
Oh, tired. Oh, no. There's no way that these guys are tired. They've got boundless energy.
Right. And that to me is what this show's about. This show's about talking to maybe a vice president of operations, and then all of a sudden we're talking to a CEO. But then we're talking to an icon, a legend, a person that took hospitality design and said, no, we're not going to go here. We're going to go here.
Right.
Don't try to keep up with us, because the second you get there, we're going to be here already.
That's right. Yeah, I love that I got schooled on the use of the word trend. That was
when you said trend, I was like, oh, you just used the dirty word. But they said something also that was very critical. Mm-hmm. This was a class. This was a class. What was also interesting is when you go through a Wynn hotel, they're not focused on the next big thing. They're not focused on let's recreate what we just did. Let's maintain what we did. Let's show that 20 years from now, the place is still spotless. That place looks like it just opened. They just took the bubble.
It really does. Yeah. It's amazing how unbelievable that place is. All right. So, Todd-Avery, I know you're backstage still. We'd love to go up to the Boston property and do a show from there. So let's talk about how we can make that happen. And Anthony, I'm feeling very good about today's show, but I think people might still want a little more hospitality success. How could they find that?
Well, actually, HospitalitySuccess.com or Hospitality Success on Facebook. We're also going to do a Facebook Live this week where I'm going to break down the components of a show, and it's going from a branded hotel to a non-branded hotel and how you do that. So I'm going to take one of my shows, which is actually a show I just looked at last night. It was in San Francisco, the San Francisco airport, very big, very, very nice hotel. And they took their brand off because they wouldn't do the PIP, and they tried to go private, and it wasn't working out very well. And I'm going to show how you can be successful, doing an independent hotel, and
awesome.
Vice versa. How do you kind of think about going into a brand? So I'm going to break that down step by step. Me and my friend Jeremy, my partner, we're going to do it this week, and we're going to do that probably once a week.
Beautiful. I love it. And I want to thank everybody for being here today. Remember, subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866. That's the word hotel to 66866. And I know you guys out there are vibrating with love and light and pulsating with love and light. So remember, you've only got one life, so blaze on. And
I got to say something before we go do that.
Yeah.
Like, we asked for comments about what does this show do for you, right? We all have our challenges, right? And we haven't been traveling. We haven't been getting on planes. And what this show does for me, it's a classroom. And that I get to sit with people that I consider like literally legends and mentors. That Roger was on this show for an hour, and I've always admired him. And Todd-Avery, I don't know very well, but I know his name. And to be able to sit here and basically be given a lesson and get inspired, it makes me feel okay. Sometimes I feel like the weird kid because I'm so intense and I expect such high standards. And then being around people like that and being able to speak to people like that, to be on our show, it's everything. So this show has really kept my inspiration and my curiosity, and it also makes you feel like, you know what, I'm not crazy.
No, you're still crazy, but not for the reasons you think.
So,
all right, guys, let's do that one more time. You've got one life, so blaze on, and
thank you so much for checking in.
We'll see you tomorrow, guys.